Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm super excited to talk about one of my favorite subjects. It's a subject that's very, very close to my heart. As many of you know, I have my roots in somatic practice. I was a bodyworker and a massage therapist for many, many years. And I'm so excited to dive into this topic with Lisa Parker, my guest today, who also has deep roots in somatic practice. So most of the psychedelic narrative thus far in modern times has been very much focused on the mind, the brain, how it interacts with our cognitive function and mental health. And today we're going to dive into and celebrate psychedelic practice around the physical body. So excited to dive into this topic. It's a topic that doesn't get much play in the field. And it's so important because one thing I have seen over the course of my career is that it's oftentimes the physical body is the through line to people's healing. It's usually it's physical symptoms that first bring people to their healing. And it's this doorway that opens up everything that goes beyond it. So it's really important. It's really accessible for most people. And we have one of our experts here to dive deeply into it. So welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Same. So Lisa, I'd love to introduce everyone to you. Lisa is the founder of Trilome and Trilome Academy. So just to introduce you and your background and work to everybody, can you share a little bit about your background and how psychedelics came into your life?
Oh, sure. So I think like most healing modalities that people create, it stems from their own healing path. And that is certainly the case for me. I come from a long history of trauma and some of it violent, and all of that happening while being raised in a very conservative Christian environment. And so it was always really confusing to me that like stuff was happening when I was trying so good to be a good girl. And so therefore that meant that maybe God didn't care, or I was the one human that was the exception to his love and protection. And so there was so many different layers to how broken I felt. Not just physically, but emotionally, and complete dysregulation in my nervous system. I learned how to disassociate from the time I was 7, being raised in what I still believe today to be a very haunted house that just completely overwhelmed me and terrified me, into all of the physical events that happened throughout my life. And I remember being, in my early 30s, just kind of resolving to, I've just missed my opportunity to be happy. And this is just how my life is. And there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just going to sit back and watch everyone else find joy and peace and love. And, I guess it's just not my luck in this human realm. And it was really, I never went into the depressive state or even suicidal ideation states because of the disassociation. I would just disappear. And it wasn't actually until, I would think like in my mid 30s, I was having so much physical pain that no one could explain. And a friend of my sister actually told me to go to a rolfer. And I was like, I don't even know what that word is. Like, what are you talking? Can you spell that for me? And I don't remember if she asked me any personal questions, but I know that she felt the deep trauma in my body. And she gave me the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And boy, like when people say that there was a life-changing moment, that for me was a big one because it was like the light bulb went off and I was like, oh, everything I'm feeling in my body is directly associated with my entire life experience. And there's something I can do about it, like news to me. And because I have more of an introverted personality with the disassociation, I never talked about my trauma. And all of this, to be fair with my family, all of this happened outside of my home. I mean, aside from the haunted house, I mean, that happened, but it had nothing to do with my family. I had the most loving, compassionate, supportive family. So because it didn't happen at home, like my parents and my siblings, no one saw it happening. So like just no one knew. And I never talked about it because talking about it would overwhelm me and I would just go off. So when I read that book and realized, oh, I want to go do body work, and like now I have a purpose that I think I can really latch onto, it was the first time that it occurred to me that I probably needed some therapy. Like I should go get some help. But again, that talk therapy didn't make sense to me. Like I'm stubborn too. Like I will go and sit in silence for an hour. It is actually my preference. So talk therapy wasn't going to do it. And thank goodness for my sister-in-law, because she told me about ayahuasca. And initially it didn't really resonate because I was a competitive athlete, in a Christian environment. So drugs were going to ruin my brain, kill my career, shame my family, and send me straight to hell. And so, of course, with my nervous system, I was like, I'm going to stay far away from that. But in that moment, when I was like, I need help, I'm sure she told me exactly what it was. But what resonated and what I heard was, you go drink a plant, you don't talk to anybody, and it's like 20 years of therapy in one night. And I go, perfect. Perfect. That sounds like a great place to start. And so it, sure enough, radically changed my life. And it was the first time that I really felt hope. Like I can heal and I can grow and I can have a place in this life. Well, of course, that it was like, give me more. And it was like this urgency. I had to sit as much as I can. Like there was just this urgent, I have to do this work. I have to do this work. And sure enough, over time, I felt like I was healthy enough to go and switch careers and go into bodywork. And for me, it was just an obvious pairing because I could see like who I was, like the healing around my belief systems and my value, being healed through, that medicine work, and then receiving body work through school because you work on each other every day. So the memories that were coming up and the emotions that were coming up by being touched were directly related to what I was experiencing through the medicine work. And so for me, it was just an obvious, like in order to heal all parts of me, I need both things. And so I just went on this mission of healing. And that was really the inspiration for the work that I do, is because I finally got to a point when we're never done with our work, of course, but I felt strong enough as a practitioner to stand in front of a client and authentically say, you're safe with me. And I know what you've been through, and here's how I healed. So here's how I can support you, or just give you what I learned, and then you take with it as you will. And that was the genesis of my work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I can hear and see a lot of people nodding as they're listening to this, as it will resonate a lot with people. So I know you and I have talked and connected around this of noticing how little the physical body is mentioned in this field. And so I would love for you to share a little bit as to why you think that is in this modern moment, because there's so many, in my experience, so many parallels between body work and medicine work, whether it's microdosing or journey work, in that it's very layered. It's very, very layered, and there's always more there in the layers. And so they're so similar and they're so complementary in the path and the spiral and the way they work. So I'd love for you to share how you have noticed that and why you think it is kind of just an emerging field within a field.
Yeah. The physical body is really intimate and it's very personal to our own lived experiences. And, from my own life experience, I can say that because I've had so many physical boundary crossings, that when people approach me or touch me, right, I get very defensive. And we hold so much in our bodies. Like it's our lived tissues, but then it's also our emotions, and we hold we hold all that close. And so when there's physical touch, then that's a doorway or an invitation to start to feel or express. And those of us that come from challenging backgrounds, right, that can feel very vulnerable. And if I don't feel safe, then that doesn't feel good. And when it comes to somatics in a psychedelic setting, touching someone when they're altered is very tricky, because how many times have our bodies been crossed when we were altered or our abuser was altered, or maybe both? And so the chances of being like re-traumatized just from this scenario is very real. And I don't think, well, let me put it this way. It can be very sensitive, and it is very sensitive, having your body touched by a practitioner. And in the realm of psychedelics in this study, like I obviously, of course, think that it's really important, because this is the genesis and the love of my life and everything around the legacy that I'm trying to build. But those that are doing scientific studies around psychedelics are scientists and therapists right now. And so it makes sense, because per their ethical regulations, they don't touch their clients. So how could they then introduce the topic, if that through their ethical regulations, they don't do that anyways, or they deem that as it's dangerous enough to, you just don't do it. And yes, there's a sensitivity there, but I think there is a way to do it safely and ethically. And that's what I've developed the last 7 years to studying and developing. But there's this, and it's like, there's this potential of a practitioner crossing a boundary, with someone that's altered, and maybe doesn't have the full agency that they do when they're sober. There's opportunities for projections. So even if there is safe touch, for the client to perceive that it was inappropriate, there's the transference and the counter transference between clients. So, and I think this is why conversations are really important. Like all of that can happen, and that is all very real. But it can be done safely with conscious consent throughout the whole thing. And that's really what I'm trying to advocate for, is let's have conversations around how we create safety around this, because it can be very beautiful and powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know everybody listening is going to be like, how is it done? Like, how is it done? So I know in our microdosing practices, it comes up very, very often when I'm working with somebody new to practice that, especially with psilocybin, big emotions can come up. Big energy comes up. And then the question becomes, how do we work with it? How do we harness it for its potential and, metabolizing it? And for a lot of people, body work is the answer. And so when you're going through these big portals of healing, it's all the way from Reiki, which is this very subtle, gentle energy work, all the way to Rolfing, which is not subtle, and body work and works. It's like, those of you who don't know what Rolfing is, it's like the deepest of deep tissue. It's deep structural work and gets into the deepest layers of our being and physical body. So I have seen in microdosing practice body work being a tremendous asset and complement. And so when I came across Lisa's work for the first time on her website, I was just like so ecstatic to see someone was doing this work and combining the two together. So I'd love for you to share with listeners, like, what is a Trilome session like? Are you microdosing? Are you working at a higher dose? Are you doing it at the same time, literally? Or share a little bit about what people would expect from a session.
Yeah, thank you for asking, because there's no context out there for this. So I think
Indeed.
Everyone is always curious to go, so what does this look like? And that's a very fair question. A Trilome session, first and foremost, I think the two very important factors is that everyone is fully dressed. There's no oils, there's no lotions, and I typically work over a blanket. So there is no asking you to undress, first of all. Like, let's just remove that vulnerability out of the equation. The second one is the dosing. And so the medicines that I use, I'm looking for a threshold dose. So a little bit more than a microdose because I want you to feel it and be cognizant of that spiritual and energetic opening and the softening of your protective mechanisms, but not enough for you to start to, leave the room and go process life experiences. You're still very much in your body and with me, throughout the whole session. So the way that it would work is a client would come in. We spend a lot of time talking because I've had a lot of conversations with them at this point. I don't ever see someone that I've never seen before, right? There's levels of safety and even nervous system predictability. The client needs to know what my touch feels like, what the session feels like, what my energy feels like. So their nervous system has this, okay, I have an idea of what is going to happen before I bring in a variable of altering your consciousness through medicine. So we talk for a while again, because there's obviously going to be some nervousness and excitement as they walk through the door. Because here's this thing they've never done before, and that's totally fair. I think it's really important to really pay attention to that nervous system and not just cognitively say I'm okay, but give space for the nervous system to go, I have questions, and am I going to be safe? And have the person ask all of the what if questions that they need answered. What if? What if? How does this work? How is it going to feel? What if I start crying? What if I don't feel anything? And that part of the preparation of the session, I think, is just as important as the actual session itself and integration. Because if you don't feel safe, then your protective mechanisms are going to lock in, and it's going to be a very different session. So creating safety from the get-go is paramount. Once they are ready, they're given a small dose of medicine. And then I have them lay on the table again, completely dressed over a blanket or under a blanket. And I do a meditation, like a 35 minute body scan meditation, just to drop them into their body as the medicine starts to come on. And then from there, we have essentially 4 hours on the table.
Wow.
Where we're doing really slow, intentional, hands-on myofascial release techniques. We get to that place of tension or pain and we pause, let them go internal to work with the medicines. How did it get there? Is it even theirs? Because epigenetics is a favorite conversation of mine right now. And what does it need for healing and release? And so as they're working with the medicine, I can start to feel that softening happen. And so I just support it with the myofascial released, like truly integrated out of their body. And we just slowly work together, so there's conscious consent with me the whole time. So like I am working directly with the client the whole time. If for whatever reason they go deeper and they're not consciously with me, my hands come off. And I wait for them to come back, make eye contact with me, before I resume. And it's a really interesting, of course I'm biased, but it's fascinating to work with the medicine and process everything at the same time. So because the hands-on touch is keeping your attention directly related to what's in your body, and that's very different than taking medicine and letting your mind go or the spirit of the medicine take you wherever it will. This is a method where your attention is being directly directed the whole time. So it keeps your focus and keeps you grounded in what's happening. And then, of course, there's the integration and the conversations and, everything that comes after it. But that essentially would be the structure of the Trilome session.
Beautiful. I love it. I love the length of the session. It's so refreshing because especially here in the West, everything is, cut to the chase as quickly as possible. And sometimes going straight to the heart of something, like in a high dose experience, you can get a lot of healing and potent healing in one shot, but really a lot of these deeper layers that go back in our ancestors sometimes that have been here for lifetimes really take the slowness and the unwinding. And so I'm sure, all of you who are listening who are body workers know this. There's a big difference between deep tissue where the therapist just goes straight into it versus allowing the body to open to receive someone's touch. And those are two totally different things. Do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah, they're completely different. And I have a very strong opinion about the hard and deep techniques. Because can you go in and overstress the tissue enough so it releases? Yes. But you're completely bypassing then what got it stuck in the first place. And so, there's arguments that your client might feel okay afterwards, but they're going to leave. And within hours and days or weeks, the pain is going to come back because the deep issue, isn't actually resolved. And this is my sensitivity. There are some people that really like that deep, hard work. And if you enjoy it and you're asking for it, that's very different than someone who is sensitive being told, breathe because this is good for you.
Yes.
And like, if a client is saying this doesn't feel good, and as the practitioner, you are saying, no, 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 I know what's best for you. I'm going to impose what I believe is best on your body. That to me is a boundary crossing, and I have a very strong issue with that. So I have a hard time receiving work from people because as soon as you're in your head doing what you want to do and not actually responding to what my body is telling you, then I don't feel safe. And the body is intelligent and the fascia is really intelligent. And if you just give it a minute so you can process like all of those complex, deep layers, the potential of the healing in that moment is so profound and so complete that it's incredibly beautiful, but you have to slow down and give it a chance to do it instead of trying to force the body to do it. So yeah, I get passionate about this topic.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Yeah, but there's a big difference.
Yep, I would love to. One of the things too that body work I think has in common with medicine practice is it's often people have the big movement and the breakthroughs afterward, actually in the integration phase. So I'll give an example of body work at my studios in Northern California. We had a very senior master body worker, and she had such a technique and mastery of her craft that a lot of times people would leave her session and they would call me the next day and go, she wasn't quite it. She wasn't quite deep enough for me. It wasn't quite deep enough touch. And I would always say, give it 2 more days and
Yeah.
then call me back if you feel the same way. And it was so amazing. They would call back and go, wow, wow. I woke up 3 days later and something moved, something shifted. This pain I had in my shoulder for the last couple years is gone. How it's magic, right? And same thing with medicine work too, is sometimes people microdose and it's during their off days or their off couple weeks on their break that they're taking that they have the energy actually move. So can you share a little bit about that? You can do medicine work while you're actively doing a physical work, but also sometimes it's the processing of it.
Sure. Yeah, I have a very similar case where this wasn't a medicine work. It was just a regular bodywork session. Pain in her left shoulder, actually. So we worked and worked and worked and worked. She kind of felt better, but then she left and she called me 2 days later and said she was sitting in her car, or she was sitting in the passenger seat of her husband's car. They were driving together. And it dawned on her that when she was a teenager, she was with a boyfriend that was abusive and he was hitting her like in the car. And so that lived memory is what she was dealing with in the left shoulder, but she didn't recognize it in the moment, but it was in the moments after where she was thinking about it and the memory started to come through. And she was like, oh, so she cried and screamed and worked her way through it. And, the pain dissipated. These are very complex layers. So I base everything on, the 5 koshas or the 5 bodies. Like our human existence isn't just our human existence. It's very intricate. There's our physical body, which is in and of itself is incredibly fascinating and intricate, but our bones and our fascia and our nervous system and the vagus nerve and how all of that plays together. But then there's our emotional body. So our way to process emotions and feel emotions. And that is really complicated because we have gender expectations around what is appropriate and inappropriate to express. There's cultural expectations. There are religious expectations. Like there's these ideas around, certain emotions are good, certain emotions are bad. And so how we're predisposed to, our emotional maturity to be able to process that, is in and of itself also very complicated. Beyond that is our energetic level. It's our meridians, it's our chakra systems, it's our nervous system, and our nervous system regulation. Well, that's really complicated in and of itself. And then beyond that is our belief systems. What do we know to be true? Well, what were we taught to be true? What did we experience as a truth versus what is actually in alignment with our truth? Certain things that we're told or certain experiences are lived, and we learn these lessons. Like as a woman, my body needs to look a certain way, or, this is what love is like, or this is what success means. But a lot of that time that truth isn't actually inner truth. So our belief systems, and can we have the maturity to hear a different idea, and talk about ideas instead of just shutting down and judging, all of our beliefs. And then beyond that is our spiritual body. That's our sense of value. Like, who am I? And do I believe that my value has to be proven, that my value can be lost, that I have to obtain value, that I have to prove my value, or just because, I exist means that I have value? And can I separate my value from a behavior? So all of these are really complex. And so when you're doing a complex session like somatic body work or medicine work or therapy work or anything, there's a strong thread of connection between all of the 5 bodies. And sometimes like each body needs to be balanced, but then they all affect one another. So being able to understand the balance of that one, and then its tendrils to the other 5 and how they've all been interconnected. So someone could go through a somatic experience or body work and their tissue feels better, but they may not realize until 2 days later what that actually, like when their physical body feels better, what's that doing for their emotional, or how they feel about themselves, or now what they believe to be true. So it's true. Sometimes it can take a little bit for those threads to become clear and for people to really understand and integrate it all together.
100%. Yeah, I think one of the major obstacles, I think, with our modern healthcare system is our modern need to label everything, particularly good or bad, conditions and diagnosis. And this emotion is good and this emotion is bad. Versus when you're working with medicine and you're working with spirit or you're working with the body, so we don't label it that way. We label it as emotion and energy. It's a texture. It's an energy to work with. And it's just moving and working with an energy. It's not good or bad. Right. And so that's why I think a lot of people go, gosh, I've been able to work through the body, or I've been able to work through medicine practice with things I could never get through talk therapy. And that's why.
Yeah. There's, if there's a judgment that something is bad, therefore something needs to be fixed. And I love this conversation because I believe everything is there for a reason. Like our bodies and how we operate are so brilliantly complex that if something is present, it's because there's something that needs our attention, or it's because something is happening. And so when people say I'm broken, I'm like, there's nothing to be broken, but what needs attention and where's the imbalance to your truth? And so I tell everyone, like, there's nothing to be fixed. Nothing is wrong. But if you pause a moment and sit down and go, okay, let's look at what's present for you and why is it there? What is it calling your attention to? Well, let's go meet it in that place with compassion and love. And isn't that a much more gentle, reassuring experience than now I have to behave a certain way because I'm broken? Like that doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I take all of the judgments. And even as I set my containers, I have that conversation that this is a container that is free from judgment. We are not here to judge your experience or your expression. We are here to just simply be present with it and go, yeah, you're here. Okay. And so what do you need? And that's where people I get a lot of tears from that conversation, just that relief that, they don't have to be fixed. Yeah, that alone can be really powerful for people.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm curious if you see this in your work where a lot of times with microdosing medicine practice, people can have these breakthroughs quickly sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's pain that they've had for many years or conditions they've had for many years. And then the edge, like the real work for a lot of them, is being able to receive
Mm-hmm.
because we're so conditioned that you have to work hard at your
Mm-hmm.
healing. And when there's self-worth issues, it's interesting. It's like they have the big healing physically, emotionally, but then it's the shame kicks up or the guilt kicks up or all of these layers kick up, and it's the inability to actually believe that it can be so simple because honestly, like the spirit moves faster than the mind does in a lot of ways. So I'd love for you to share how any stories or anecdotes or clients that you've had who've moved through some big profound healing with body work combined with medicine.
I have stories all day long about that. I have a lot of really beautiful stories. And to your first point about receiving, I mean, if they're coming to me, it's because there's some part of them that knows that, they're looking for support. And I've already had conversations around that it's possible. And so if they arrive at their yes to show up for a session, then I already know like there's that core belief system that knows the truth. But it's the mind and it's the stories that kind of get in the way. And that's why I think the session is 4 hours, because we give all kinds of time and space. If there's that protectiveness that comes in, or if that belief system that, they don't deserve to receive, then we sit with it and we dig down to what is their truth, not what they've been told and not what's expected, but what do they know to be true about themselves? And 10 times out of 10, truth is very simple. And truth, when it is spoken and when it is known, it is known in the heart. Like there's a relief about it. There's a resonance about it that people recognize. And so people can find that, and they often do in a session. And sometimes they go back into a pattern. And so we just come back to truth, and they go back into a pattern and we come back to truth. But I use a lot of IFS work, because it's those protective parts. It's those, all the different parts of us that are trying to be helpful. And at some point they were, otherwise we wouldn't have learned them or developed them. And so every time there's that protectiveness or that guarding, like, okay, what part of you is trying to be helpful? And again, is it yours, or is that the voice of another? And what is the truth? So there's a beautiful way to be able to start to unwind that in a way where they don't feel challenged or pushed, but instead just supported and open and safe enough to where, those deeper truths can start to take residence in the heart and through the body. As far as stories, specific stories to go, goodness, one of my clients early on had a double mastectomy, so breast cancer survivor, and her body didn't feel like hers. Like she had that almost like the phantom limb. So she had a scratch on her chest. Like her husband would actually have to scratch her back because she just didn't have any kind of felt feeling. Like her body felt violated and not like hers. And so gently kind of going through and making peace with her body and making peace with safe touch and that her body is safe. She sent me a picture the next day where she was out hiking in the woods up in Washington and her shirt off. And she was just proud as could be with her body. And she was like, I can feel, and it feels like me again. There's the stories around, I had another client that's a yogi. So her yoga practice is really important to her, obviously. But she was having a lot of pain in her right shoulder. And so we did body work. She'd feel better. It would come back. She'd feel better. It would come back. And so she finally decided to come do a Trilome session. And the memory came through that she had a young infant daughter that had this like 1 in a million, disease, like very, very rare. And she passed away at 8 months, and she was holding her in her right arm when she passed. And this was 8 years ago, but she was holding on to her. And she's also a therapist, by the way. And so through the simple conversations around like, what are other ways, like you don't have to let go. I mean, there's altars and pictures and memorials, like there's things that you can do to keep her with you, and she's never going to go. But that holding in her tissue was just a strategy to keep her close. Like, well, let's find another strategy. And then, she was able to resume her yoga practice. There's another client who was in psychotherapy for 40 years, terrible lower back pain, was about to get a spinal fusion. And come to find out that lower back is strongly associated with PTSD from an abusive father and a strained relationship with his mother, and all kinds of life scenarios that made him feel like, he couldn't, like he was just stuck. He couldn't live his life. And we got down to his truth, and he walked out pain-free, and it's never come back. I mean, there's all kinds of stories, but there can be moments where that deep knowing, if you just give it space and an opportunity to come through, and once you know it, there's kind of an immediate response. You don't have to mull over the truth. Like, if you know it, you know it. And that's a large part of these sessions. And there are times too where people come in with chronic pain and they're trying to get down to the root cause. And, they come to the realization of what it is and what they're holding. And they may not be able to get to their resolution in that moment, but that's okay, because now they know what they're working with. So they can leave, and I send them to their therapist. Now, whereas before you didn't, so there's a clarity. So sometimes people come to their resolution and sometimes not, but they always come away with an understanding of what they're holding.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. I just, as you were speaking, there's parallels between the way psilocybin works and the way the body works, and its intelligence are undeniable. It's so amazing. Like, I have watched, the way mushrooms work with people. It's always so unique, and sometimes it's very nonlinear. But then in hindsight, I'm like, that was the fastest way to get to the truth.
Yeah.
It was counterintuitive while they were moving through the process. And the body often is exactly the same way. When I watch my body workers would work in the studio, and sometimes the client would be like, I said I was like working on this thing, but they were working over here in this other part of my body. And again, I would say, just wait, give it a couple days, because they could feel energetically that the root was actually over here. And if they worked here, it would release this part of their life. And just as you described, like, our memory and our pain body is intricately connect with the tissue. And so as you heal, whether it's with body work or with mushroom practice, it comes back. And it's remarkable how often, like, the healing will come back at the same time the memory resurfaces, or the virus that they had at the time that this memory was woven in will come back and exacerbate. And so I see that a lot with people, especially in women around perimenopause, menopause. This seems to happen in spades around this time because everything is coming up at this time. It's a really powerful time to work with people on these things and kind of recalibrate how we receive them. It's just vital intelligence and information. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, going through perimenopause myself, I have a deep understanding of just the amount of transition that's happening, through a woman's body and system. So I have a whole newfound level of respect for, and this is something that every single woman is going to go through. It's like, it's such an interesting thing. There's nothing else in our life, aside from death, where we can say this is, a guaranteed process that you're going to go through. So I have a new love for the niche of the older woman.
Absolutely. We joke often it's a psychedelic experience in and of itself.
Yeah. I would concur with that.
Let's talk about, I think one of the frontiers ahead of us is an understanding and recognition of the role of fascia.
Mm,
Yes, I would love. Can you share for listeners who are like, what is that? You know, it's another word like Rolfing and Reiki. Like,
right.
what is fascia? Can you share a little bit about what the fascia is, its role it plays in the body, and how tremendous a role it plays in our healing and stored memories?
Mm. Yeah, this is one of those new frontiers that I think science is just now coming into understanding how much we don't understand about it. Um, in general, the fascia is a connective tissue that connects everything in our, it's like everything that holds our body together. But not only that, it also acts like a sleeve. So there's like just under our skin or epidermis, there's like a big layer of kind of fascia to kind of hold our body within our physical realm. But then around all of our organs and all of the muscle bundles also. So yes, to hold it together, but it also allows that layer protection that allows things to slide around each other. So think about, because you have different muscles that cross all the time, right? It's a very intricate system. It's not just linear layers, everything is interwoven together. And so that fascia connection is like a 3D web, that's very malleable, but it can also get really tense and hard also. So typically, and specifically bodywork does that, and massage too, actually. Like if there's a restriction, like if that tissue starts to get really hard, then it starts to pull on all of the other tissues with it because they can't move independently of each other. Think about, the visual that, forgive the simplicity, but like a bowl of pasta, it's freshly cooked, but there's no oil in it yet. And it starts to like stick together. But then as soon as you put oil in, then it gets, then it's all, nice and slippery and independent. So a lot of the body work and the massage, what we're doing is we're going into that fascial layer to making sure that that's free to allow the muscles, and other skin and tissues and organs to move in the way that they were originally designed to move. What we're starting to understand is that there's a texture or a tension that can happen with that connective tissue layer, and it can start to get really tense. And I think this is the science of what we're trying to understand is how and why. But, the best way that I can describe it is if you think about your physiological response. If I'm sitting at home with friends and family and loved ones and I'm perfectly at peace, there's an ease throughout my entire body. And you can kind of sense how relaxed you might feel versus how my body is going to be different if I'm right in the middle of Los Angeles traffic or if there's a potential threat or conflict. Like if someone is coming at me and I feel threatened, right? There's a tension that happens. Well, that tension and doesn't just happen through the muscle fibers getting tense. It's also through the tissue and the fascia. So what's interesting is we get through that threat or conflict. We may relax, but maybe not all the way. And then life happens and we tense and we get through it. We relax, but maybe not all the way. And then maybe I am emotionally triggered because emotions carry energy. And so then my body responds to like this deep emotion. And then I process it or I don't, and I relax or not all the way. So suddenly over time, we have all this extra tension in our tissues that's not directly connected to our central nervous system. So I'm not cognitively doing it, nor can I sit there and necessarily meditate it away. There needs to be external stimulation, if you will, to bring attention to that extra tension in the muscles now, or in the fascia. So let's look at like emotional layers. Like if that tension is because I'm having an emotional triggered response and I don't process it fully, as soon as I receive body work and it starts to push into that and start to release, well, then that's going to release the emotion. So suddenly emotion comes through, and sometimes that emotion has a story, and sometimes it doesn't. So it's okay. So people that feel emotion, they're like, I'm crying and I don't know why. It's okay. It's just the extra, it's just your body releasing what it's been storing. Same with epigenetics or ancestral things. Like our genes are predisposed to respond to stress, conflict, stimulation. And so we may be unconsciously responding to something that's not even ours. But if I'm not doing it consciously enough, I'm not aware of it. Well, then how do I address it, right? It's through either medicine work or through external stimulation to bring attention to that tissue using, right, intentional and slow techniques to allow that tissue to start to relax. And as it does, then whatever got it there is also just naturally being processed through the psyche and through the body. And so that's my version of the connection and the importance of fascia, which is also why it's a protective layer that protects the muscles. If I go deep and hard into the muscle fiber, I'm completely missing it. It's a completely different part of the nervous system that will never be responsive. So this is another argument around be careful about going hard and deep because you're missing one of the most important vital layers of the body in order for processing to happen.
Love it. It's like the body's mycelium.
It is, exactly. Yeah, it's everywhere. It surrounds everything. It has a very vital, important role, and it's fascinating to me. Like how can emotion be tied to a tissue? Like it's just I can chew on this all day long. I find it fascinating.
So much, so much. Speaking of, I'm so curious where the name Trilome came from. What is behind that? And also with your academy, when people are coming to you for training in this methodology, do you have to be a body worker or massage therapist to begin with to learn these practices and techniques? So I'd love for you to share on that.
Yeah, thank you. I get the question about the word. It's really fun because it was a word that I created, which I have never done that before, but it was deeply divinely inspired. So once I realized that I was going to combine, bodywork and psychedelics, I needed a name for it because it's not just bodywork, it's something else. I needed a way to distinguish what I was doing. And so I was sitting there thinking about it, and I had just actually gotten a tattoo on my arm. And I've always loved the symbol of the unilome, which is a Buddhist symbol that starts with a swirl, a circle, goes up into a switchback, and then ends with a straight line. And there's 100 different variations of it, but those three components are always the same. There's a circle, a switchback, and a straight line. And what that represents is a person's path through their life, as they're looking for their purpose. So the circle is you're born, you're growing up, and then you go into adulthood or you start making your own decisions. You're like, well, that's not right. Well, that wasn't right. That wasn't right. Until you reach that moment of, purpose, clarity, enlightenment. I've got it. And now you have your straight line. And I've always loved that because it's such a beautiful symbol of my own life. And if you pull back and look at it, it creates a beautiful picture. But through my experience and through my studies, I'm like, but I'm doing body work and psychedelics. So it's not just one existence unilome, but there's different parts to it. There's the mind and the body and the soul. So that's three. And all three of those need to be in alignment in order for that person to reach that point. And I'm doing that using body work, energy work, and psychedelics. So all threes. So I took the una off, which is one, and tri is three. So it's Trilo. So it's a method to help people find their straight line, understanding that different aspects have to be aligned in order for that to happen. So Trilo, yeah, that's where the word came from. That was what inspired it. Did a quick search, and sure enough, it didn't exist. So I trademarked that right away. Yeah, and it took me quite a few years to figure out how to do this safely. Because it's one thing to do it with friends and family that know and trust me. So they trust me in altered states because they know that they're safe. But how do I ensure safety of someone else? And so what medicines I use, the dosing I use, the protocols, took me a couple of years. And then it quickly was obvious that this was beyond me and bigger than me. And I needed help. And so I needed to start to train other people how to do this. For right now, I don't have the time or space or capacity to teach someone body work. So for right now, this is strictly for body workers, massage therapists, physical therapists, those that have somatic that understand how to work with the body. I think at some point, I think my vision is to have an actual academy, like brick and mortar academy, where I can teach all of it together. But for right now, at least for this first stage, it's just for body workers. Those that have experience with psychedelics is really encouraged. So you have, that understanding. But I also spend a lot of time teaching all of that. as well. So it's a preference, but it's not a criteria that would disqualify anyone from doing it. And the way that the training is set is it starts with a 16-week theoretical online, so go at your own pace module, because we're teaching all of those 5 bodies, how the nervous system works, trauma-informed care, how, like, what psychedelics are and how they work on the brain and what and how and when. And then once they have a good understanding of that theoretical knowledge, then I can teach them the technique. So that's when they would come to me for a week. And then I teach them specifically, because they can take their method, whatever it may be, whether it's Thai or Swedish or, whatever, it doesn't necessarily matter. But the technique has to change when someone is altered. And I think part of creating safety around all of this, and for practitioners that are curious, my biggest warning is, if you do your regular technique when someone is altered, it's going to be overstimulating. And again, they're not going to have time to process what they're processing, because their attention is being drawn, like they've already passed it and they're on to something else. So the type of technique, I can, regardless of what your specialty is, but there's a very specific technique that needs to happen. There's a very specific attention to the client, and recognizing when to stop and when to pause and when to give them space and when they're ready to move on. So we spend, and all of that has to be done in person, so that's the structure of the academy. Is the first little bit is online, wherever you may be, and then you would come to me for a week, and we do the hands-on specific technique portion of it.
I love it so, so much. I'd love for you to share, I share oftentimes, because I have a lot of people coming to me for guideship. They're like, I'm interested in providing this work or weaving it into my existing work. What kind of background do I need to prepare? And they're always surprised when I say massage therapists are among the best suited to do this work. Like, you already come in with so many of the skills and the foundation to be a really incredible medicine guide. And they're always like, really, why is that? And so I'd love to pose that question to you. I have my own thoughts about it, but given that you're working with a lot of body workers and massage therapists, what are some of those qualities that you think inform them?
Someone that's done their work. Someone that's done their work. And I say that because there's a huge responsibility of holding a space like this for your client and being able to help them navigate it safely. And I do tell everyone, like, it is not your job to fix them. We've already had that conversation. There is no fixing. But making sure that they are energetically and emotionally and physically safe. So if they say something that's triggering, and you don't know how to hold that, and then you're triggered, and then they're feeding off of your trigger, right? That's going to spiral into a session that's not going to be a safe session. And a lot of that comes with practitioners that know how to hold that really strong masculine energy. Like, I have you and you are safe. And I'm okay saying I don't know. But I'm going to make sure that, there's every part of you is safe in this moment. And I'm not trying to fix you. I'm just holding space to observe and to witness. And if I have something to offer that's going to help you work through that faster, great. But that groundedness, and an experienced body worker. I mean, could I work with someone who's straight out of school? Maybe, but I think there needs to be some experience. Like, you have to really understand how to read the body. And like what a body feels like when there's tension or a protective mechanism. Like, there's just an experience to your touch that comes from just doing a bunch of sessions on your own. And then, of course, I would love for someone to have personal experience with psychedelics. They have that cognitive understanding around it. So if someone has never done psychedelics, I would have them go do a couple sessions first, because they just need to know what it's like to be in an altered state, even though we're using low doses. There's still a responsibility around that. A little bit of a tangent, but so often I hear people who go through a psychedelic experience for the first time, or maybe for the second time, and they go, "That was wonderful. I'm going to be a facilitator." Like, thank you. I'm so happy that you resonate with the work, but go do it again, and go do it again, and go do it again. Because you have to understand, like, if someone's having a challenging experience, what that feels like. If someone is saying, I don't feel the medicine, well, what does that feel like? There's so many things that you need to be cognizant and aware of that really just take experience and expertise in.
100%. Yes. And that true too in my experience of bodywork too. It was the receiving of bodywork from master body workers in their mastery that were
Yeah.
my greatest mentorship and learning. Just
Yeah.
being under their hands, but also just being in their presence and being
Yeah.
seen by them was incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I've added the criteria that because there's no context for the work that I do. No one has a context for what it's like or what it feels like because it's just not readily out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do know that there's underground practitioners that are doing it. So someone may have had an experience like that. But being able to come in, like every one of my practitioners, like you have to go through a couple Trilome sessions yourself. Like you have to have context for what it is that you're doing and for the space that you're holding and the sensitivity and the responsibility of holding that. And that it just comes from experience.
Mm-hmm. I love that. If I may, I'd love to reflect something in you that I see that, a lot of people doing this work, and especially you doing this work when you're kind of creating something new and first, right? It comes with a lot of fear. But one of the things I'm really seeing in my colleagues and guides that are achieving, mastery in their craft is they have very little to no fear in their body. It is their fearlessness that is allowing other people to access their own fearlessness. So I'd love for you to reflect just in bringing this work forth into the world and dealing with the way people receive it, the way we have so much fear around incorporating touch, therapeutic touch into the psychedelic narrative. Any thoughts you have around the fear, the working with fear, because I think it's an important topic, but also how people stepping into this work can work with overcoming a lot of the stigma and old narratives that these two can't be combined.
Yeah. The reality is that this particular work is not legal. There's no gray area. It's not. It's not. But so I think the reason why I honestly have no fear around it. I'm very open about what I do. I'm very open about being specific about what I do. I am not trying to placate anybody. And the reason for that is because once my eyes were kind of opened and I got this inspiration, in that exact moment, my entire life made sense. All of my trauma, all of my abuse, all of my pain, the violence that took medical intervention, all of that made complete sense to me. Going, oh, I went through all of that so I could learn how to heal all of it. So I could sit in front of anyone and go, with full authenticity, I know what you're going through. Are there things I've never experienced? Of course. But I understand emotions. So I understand fear. It doesn't matter what the fear is from. I understand fear. And I understand nervous system deregulation. I understand not feeling valued. Regardless of what the story of what caused it, I understand what that feels like. And so I think that just gave me this resilience of, if that was the point of my life, then how could I be fearful about stepping in and stepping into that purpose? And my dad told me, I don't remember if I was a senior or if I was a freshman in college, and he had no idea what was going on. Specifically, I think my parents knew there were points in my life when I was in trouble, but they didn't necessarily know why. And this was one of those moments. And he goes, I don't know why you've had such a hard life, but God must be preparing you for something. And I hated him in that moment. I was like, fuck that. Preparing me for what? To hold suffering? Like when everyone else gets to hold joy and success? Like, fuck that. I was so angry. But now I understand what he was saying. And I don't know that he even necessarily understood what he was saying, but it was like my life experiences have made me damn good at what I do. And I know what I know, that I know that I know that I know it because I know it. And so if someone wants to come at me because they think that my integrity is out of line, that's not my truth. And I know why I'm here. And I know why I'm supposed to be, pushing the efficacy of this kind of work. And because of my physical boundary crossings and my life experiences, I am super sensitive, and I'm an empath, and I'm a projector. Like I stand guard around everyone else's because there's no chance that anyone's going to feel like their boundaries have been crossed, and I can hold that. And, of course I'm careful. There's that old Indian saying around trust God, but tie your camel. I have legal representation. I'm very specific with how I work and building the efficacy and the safety mechanisms around my work. I'm careful, but will I talk about it? Yes.
Thank you for being you. Your courage and light. Love it. Love it. Is there anything else you would love to share to folks? Anything people new to this work have questions about, or anything at all you'd love to share before we close up?
Yeah, I think like all things, this is one option, but it's not the option. There are very real scenarios where this type of work is not safe. If someone hasn't done enough therapeutic work to where their nervous system is super sensitive to receive something like this, then yes, I would say not yet. Not a no, but just not yet. You have some work to do. There's medications and there's like mental health and like there's all kinds of things. And so, but I strongly believe that there is an option for everything. This idea that we just have to put up with stuff. I get so angry when I hear medical professionals telling their patients, "Oh, sorry, nothing else to be done." Because I don't believe that. So whatever it is that people are going through, just knowing that healing is possible. It is absolutely possible, regardless of what you're dealing with. The body knows how to heal and it wants to heal. Same with the psyche. It's designed to keep you functional and safe. So go find those methods, and it may take a couple conversations with people, but just, if anyone can just receive a sense of support and hope that there is something for you. You don't have to put up with any type of pain or ailment. And, if this type of work does resonate, it's an option, but there's always something out there. I firmly believe.
Thank you. Love it. How can folks find you? Are you on the socials? What's your website? Please share. And we'll, of course, add these to the show notes, but in case people are just listening in, I always like to share verbally too.
Social media. I'm making friends with it. I do have an Instagram, so Trilome Academy is the Instagram. There is Facebook too, although I'll send it to you so we can put it in the show notes because I actually don't know what the Facebook is.
we will do that.
But I do have a website, trilome.com, TRILOME.com. So you can always contact me and find me there. Email address, lisa@trilome.com. So either of those, and I'll give you the other links that I just don't know off the top of my head at the moment, but we'll give them to you so we can put them in the notes.
We will happily add them. Yes, indeed. Awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for your work, your voice, your vision, and being with us today. I really super appreciate you.
Thank you, Casey. Yeah, thank you so much just for the invitation and for allowing the conversation. This is what I'm after is let's at least talk about it. You don't have to agree with me, but let's at least talk about it. And so the invitation was really special and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Likewise. All right. Thank you everybody for being here and for listening. We'll look forward to seeing you back in just a couple weeks. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Ready to take the next step? Please visit us online at microdosingforhealing.com. There you'll find lots of information about our global community, professional training programs, and upcoming immersions. See you there.